BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello, I'm David Currie and this is the Scottish Football Podcast. All the news, views and Champions League brackets qualifiers analysis you need on Wednesday the 27th of August after an almighty letdown in Almaty for Celtic.
Dyson Maida saved, Celtic are out. Kairat Almaty emerged triumphant in the penalty shootout.
Manager Brendan Rodgers is finally getting some reinforcements for his squad. But is it all too late?
But I think all we can do now is what we have to look at where we're at as a football club.
And there's another huge night of European action to come this evening. Rangers are in Bruges, trailing 3-1 from the first leg and will be without the want-away Hamza Egeman.
It's happened, we move forward, we dealt with it. He's got what he wanted. Well, it looks likely to get what he wanted, to play somewhere else. Ideally it wouldn't have happened, but it did, and now we move forward and we can move on.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
Hello there folks, and time to introduce our guests. They are the Herald's sports writer at large, what a title, Stephen McGowan, and Cammy Bell, the former Kelly Dundee United and Rangers goalkeeper, among others. He knows a thing or two about saving penalties. How many was it in one game, Cammy? Just the three, was it?
Just the three, David, yes, many moons ago.
Not that you ever mention it. And Stephen, I think you and I played five-a-sides about 30 years ago. Do you remember those glory days?
I've been trying to forget them, never mind remember them. Particularly your performances, I have to say.
Come on, steady on. Right, enough of that nonsense. Let's crack on with the consequences of Kairat. A calamity for Celtic's Champions League aspirations, losing 3-2 on penalties. How would you describe it, Stephen?
I think it was embarrassing for Celtic. I think it was quite an inept performance, a really poor 90 minutes. I think it was slightly better than extra time, but that's not saying a great deal, and in the penalties slightly summed it all up. I think in the cold light of day, this Celtic team is a Europa League team. I think that's a level they're currently masquerading at. I don't think they would have done themselves a great deal of justice in the Champions League, so every cloud is a silver lining, but I think there are huge questions that need to be asked now about Celtic's football operation. I mean, I think people were saying widely before that game that they hadn't done enough in order to bring in quality additions to the squad. I think Brendan Rodgers had hinted at that himself. And I think that's now been backed up by what we saw last night when Yang and a 34-year-old James Forrest were starting wide men. And when the defence ended up being Colby Donovan, who was excellent incidentally as a substitute, Cameron Carter-Vickers, who had Dane Murray coming in, and you had a centre-back, Liam Scales, playing at left-back. I think that tells you that these reinforcements who are coming in, Balagwisha and Marcelo Saraki, are just a little bit too little, too late, whatever they're doing in the transfer market.
And that's all we've got time for on the Scottish Football Podcast this morning.
Well, you asked the question. If you wanted to hear it,
that's a comprehensive answer. A silver lining, Cammy, but no pot of gold, no Champions League pot of gold. A lot's made of the financial impact, but in the cold light of day, it's the football that really matters, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, David. And I think Stephen touched on it there, that it was embarrassing for Celtic. It just wasn't good enough on the night. You expected a lot more. Listen, the excuses were there. Long distance to travel, playing at altitude. There's all these at the heat. There's all these excuses there. But Brendan Rodgers, in his press conference the day before, didn't want to use any of them. And listen, I just feel as if the performance certainly wasn't good enough to get a result. It was such a poor game between the two teams. It was almost two teams that didn't want to lose the game. But for me, Celtic are at a standard. They should be going and taking control of that game. They've got players that can perform better as well, and just didn't do it. They were hoping they did turn up last night, because again, it's been a tough start to the season for them, albeit domestically. They've managed to win their games, but it's not been fluid for them. And listen, it just shows that, as Stephen said, the reinforcements they need. I certainly think there's a number of areas in the Celtic team this season that need reinforcements. And the look, listen, they look a shadow of the team they were last season.
A shadow of the team they were last season. So who's culpable? Stephen, I think you're already pointing the finger of blame, of responsibility, so to speak, at the board. Brendan Rodgers, he's got to shoulder some of the responsibility as well, though.
I think there's enough point to go around with this one, David. I mean, I think a lot of supporters last night were taking the view that that was a team that should have been good enough to beat Kairat Almaty. As I say, I think if you look at some of the weakness in key areas, such as on the wide areas, the failure to replace Kyogo Furuhashi, the failure to replace Nicholas Kuhn to an adequate standard, the failure to bring in a backup left back who could go in place of Kieran Tierney when he inevitably tires after 70 minutes, I would still veer towards the board of directors who ultimately have over 70, in the last count, it was £64.5 million in the bank. That was before the Champions League money came in, before they sold Nicholas Kuhn, before they got a sell-on for Jeremy Frimpong and so on. But I think there will be lots of fingers pointed in the coming days. I think all round for Celtic's football operation, it's the 7th time in 9 playoff attempts that they've failed in the Champions League since 2014. It's not good enough.
Well, does that not, those stats you've just quoted there, Stephen, does that not underline the point you mentioned earlier on? Whether we like it or not, we're going to have to maybe face up to the fact that Celtic, and maybe their level is the Europa League.
Well, but if you look at the opponents they've played against, I think most people would say, looking at the budgets, that they should be beating most of these teams. I mean, they lost to Maribor, they lost to AEK Athens, they lost to Malmo, they lost to Midtjylland. And it's under different managers, incidentally. It's not just Brendan Rodgers. I mean, these games are lost by Ronnie Deila, by Neil Lennon, by Ange Postecoglou, now by Brendan Rodgers. There's really just one common denominator in this, if you look at it.
The gamble, Cammy, of not strengthening the squad for the Champions League qualifiers, if it can be described as a gamble, backfired big time?
Yeah, it certainly did. Listen, for me, it was always a huge gamble, and again, for me, it's not ideal planning. I think Brendan Rodgers alluded to that last night after the game, saying that bringing in signing, it's all about timing. For me, I think what he's touching on is the timing of signings. You need to bring them in early, and it's never going to be like that, Dave. You're not going to get every single player in for pre-season, but you can get a chunk of your players in, and then one or two might follow in later on in the transfer window. But certainly to not have the key reinforcements that they needed and they knew they needed has backfired for me, and it's damaged them. Listen, they've lost the Champions League money. Yes, they've got money in the bank, but that would have been more money to develop their football club and take them to the next level on. It just might slow them down, and it's certainly going to harm them short term.
So why is that? Why can you not get all the players you want in time for the crucial Champions League qualifiers, which can be defining points in the season?
Yeah, listen, it's never ideal not getting your players in, but I think it's always difficult when you're trying to find these top quality players. Then they're sometimes not available. Depends on where they are contractually. Depends where they are sitting with their current team, if they're playing or not. The price, obviously, as well. With Celtic, we know they've got a certain model that they stick to. But I just think it's all about planning for me. They knew that Nicholas Kuhn left in January, so they had that period between January and the end of the season to identify somebody to bring in. The Kyogo, that was. And then Nicholas Kuhn obviously then left. So the problem is you've not brought and replaced these top players. Another player for me, and we touched on it, was a left back here, Greg Taylor. That was a big one for me, because I think when you look at Kieran Tierney, we've not seen the best of him yet. It's took a little bit of time for him to get up to speed. We probably always knew that's going to happen, and you've nobody to replace him. So, yeah, there's big gaps in the Celtic team at the moment.
So
I think if you look at it, David, if you look at one situation in particular, however, look at Jakob Breum of Go Ahead Eagles. Now, that's a player we know Celtic bid for. The player is valued at £5 million plus £1 million if Celtic had got to the Champions League by his club. They went in with a bid of £1.5 million. They upped that to 1.75 plus add-ons. They went to £3 million. Now, I think most people would say that if Celtic really want that player, they have the money in the bank to go and sign him. Why didn't they?
Rhetorical question. You want to answer that?
The money is there, and it would really make a dent in the bottom line. So it raises the question, if you have a player who's valued at $5 million and you can afford that, and if you've identified him as a player you want to sign, you've went so far as bidding for him, not just once, not just twice, but 3 times, you would have to think that, as Rangers did with Oliver Antman with the same club, you would go and just sign him.
Is it a bit of nervousness from the board from spending money with on Adam Ida and Engels, who hasn't hit the ground? They've not hit the ground running. They spent a lot of money on these guys, and then is that nervousness creeping in from the board that it could be another player who we spend money on and is potentially going to be a little bit of a failure, a slow starter to their career? I don't know. It's just interesting that they don't spend the money, Stephen, because they've certainly got the money there, and Brendan Rodgers is making all the noises that he needs to strengthen. We all know they need to strengthen their squad if they want to progress in these big Champions League games.
Yeah, but one of the phrases I think used before, Cammy, was it's like they're having about a buyer's remorse after last summer, isn't it? It's like they're seeing and I have to say, I don't think the fees can be laid at the door of Brendan Rodgers. That's not his responsibility. But they paid a lot of money for those 3 players. A lot of people perceive they haven't worked out. Now you've got the question over his contract as well. I think there might be a question there in their minds, do they really want to give him the same amount of money again if he's not staying beyond next summer? It's a bit of a catch-22 though, isn't it? Whereby, he says, well, okay, I'll consider staying if you back me and if you show some real ambition, and they're reluctant to do that until he actually commits to staying. So yeah, it's a bit of a chicken and egg scenario.
So how does the failure to reach the Champions League, how is that going to impact on recruitment? Do they need fewer players of quality for the Europa League, and have they got enough players in the squad already to win the Premiership, so they can maybe call off the dogs, as it were, in pursuit of some of these targets now? Does it curtail their ambition a wee bit in the transfer market?
I think you'll only find out in the final days, won't you? I mean, I think we know already that they are bringing in Uruguayan left back. We know they're bringing in Michelangelo Balikwisha. I think they would like ideally to bring in a right wing and possibly a striker. But is that impacted by last night? I think only time will tell that. I mean, I suspect, they probably do have enough in terms of what they have just now to have a good season domestically still. But I think there's more pressure going into Sunday's game against Rangers at Ibrox than there really could and should have been. I mean, if we've seen a fallout to this game, I think it will be volcanic if they go to Ibrox and fail to beat Rangers.
Yeah, what impact can that defeat in Almaty, Cammy, have on this huge Old Firm game at the weekend at Ibrox?
Listen, it can have, obviously, there's a lot of negativity floating about at this moment. It's very raw. It's only happened last night, so there will be negativity. But listen, Brendan Rodgers needs to get his players obviously back to Scotland and dust themselves down, because they know they've got a huge match against Rangers at Ibrox. They know where Rangers are this season as well. So again, Rangers are a vulnerable team at the moment. And Brendan Rodgers needs to see a reaction. He needs to see a reaction from his players. And certainly the fans will demand that. Because listen, see if they go to Ibrox and win the game. It's not all forgotten about, but everything seems that little bit better if they can manage to do that. So he's got the ideal opportunity to quickly turn this around and almost not completely forget about it, brush it aside a little bit, and it will be slowly forgotten about if they can go and win at Ibrox.
That's also part of the problem, Cammy, isn't it? Is that they win domestically and people tell themselves, well, we're doing pretty well, we're doing fine. And what it's doing at a European level is papering over the cracks.
And there's more in terms of Champions League qualifying tonight, if your nerves can stand it. Rangers 3-1 down going into the away leg of their playoff round tie with Club Brugge. Cammy, can they pull it off? Do they have a puncher's chance?
Listen, you've always got a chance when you're playing football. You never know what's going to happen, but it's going to take a monumental effort for Rangers to go over there and turn this around. They can't afford any mistakes. Defensively, we know this season they've gave away far too many soft goals. They can't afford that tonight. They need to keep a clean sheet. For me, that's key. If they keep a clean sheet, they give themselves a chance. But if they concede any goals, listen, it's going to be a little bit too far. We've probably not seen the performance yet from Rangers under Russell Martin that will get them over the line. So you've just got to hope that it's in there somewhere and he can pull it together to tonight and get that result, because it would be massive for the club. If they could turn this around, and for Russell Martin, it could almost kickstart his Rangers career, because it's not really started on the right foot, certainly.
Stephen, if Celtic have got worries, they're nothing compared to the troubles Rangers have been mired in.
Yeah, I mean, I think after St Mirren at the weekend, I think a lot of people drew the conclusion that Russell Martin looked like he was a man in the wrong movie. A lot of criticism of slow possession-based football. They're giving up too many chances. They're losing pretty soft goals. I think it's interesting actually that there is so much focus on Russell Martin, because I think Kevin Felwell, the technical director, was brought in to try and improve the recruitment. It's early days, but I don't know if you could absolutely say at the minute that all the signings they've made look as if they're going to be a rip-roaring success. But I think it's an awful lot to ask to turn this around. Club Brugge are a really quality team. And as Cammy says, it's very, very difficult to see this team defending in a manner which will get them just a platform to go forward and try and make an impact in this tie tonight.
Hard to believe they could trump Celtic in the Champions League, Cammy.
Yes, incredible. Again, it's when you look at the two sides domestically, Rangers are miles behind Celtic and be able to navigate their way through these domestic fixtures. But listen, you've just got to hope tonight that they turn up. For me, it's key they keep a clean sheet, and as Stephen said, it's a platform to build on. It gives them that focus. But I've certainly not seen it this season that they domestically that defensively are good enough. So I think it's going to be really, really tough for Rangers to get through this tie, and probably Europa League is where they sit at this moment of time. But as I said, it's vitally important for the club financially if they can manage to produce some sort of performance that gets them through this. This would be absolutely huge, and probably one of the biggest wins for certainly a number of years if they manage to do it.
Do you agree with what Stephen was saying there, that Russell Martin's beginning to look as though he might be a man in the wrong movie?
Yeah, listen, he's under pressure. We all know that. There's no getting away from that. He knows his sell. He's under pressure with the results that have came, certainly from the fans. And they viewed their opinion after the St Mirren game. I was there and I watched the fans' frustration, which was vented at the players as they went to clap the fans. So we all know that the frustration's there, but he needs to turn it around quickly. I think tonight's certainly a step too far, but certainly he's going to get judged on Sunday and what happens in that Old Firm game. And then he's got two huge games after that as well, domestically, Hearts at home and then Hibs in the quarter-final of the League Cup. So it's a big, big few weeks for Russell Martin ahead of himself, and he needs to turn it around quickly. We need to see performances, progression, and he needs to ultimately get wins. Wins is what he was talking about when he first came in the door. Winning is what it's all about at Rangers Football Club, and he needs to start doing that.
Do you think the way I saw you on the Sports Scene, the highlights showed talking about St Mirren against Rangers. I was there watching that game, Cammy, and Rangers seemed to lack a kind of fluency. They weren't playing in a joined up fashion. Do you expect big changes to the team?
I expect some changes, certainly, David. I totally agree. They look very individuals at the moment. They're all playing as individuals. They're not really joined up. The system's not working. We know he changed his system at half-time and went to a back three against St Mirren. So he's tinkering with it all the time. When you're tinkering with it, it's not working, that's what you're doing. You're not leaving it to go with. So he is trying to find a system that the players can play, but it's just not clicking at the moment in every department, defensively, offensively. Again, you look at them, they're not scoring enough goals for me as well. So yeah, something's got to change. I expect James Tavernier to come back in. For me, I think he made a real difference when he came on, showed a little bit of leadership skills and was directing the players on the pitch. And some of the players certainly looked lost before he came on. So I think he's got to start the game. And it's interesting because he's been getting a lot of stick for the last few years off the fans, and all the fans are demanding that he's back playing. So yeah, listen, it's interesting the way that things pan out in football.
He might well be in the team, Stephen, but somebody who definitely won't be in the team is Hamza Egeman. Didn't train with the club yesterday. A move appears to be imminent. it's creating a kind of unsettled atmosphere.
Yeah, and Hamza Egerman's contributed to that with the way it looks as if he has conducted himself at St Mirren on Sunday. I think that effectively ended his Rangers career. So we're told the Rangers have accepted a bid from Wheel, but bizarrely that this release clause that we're told has been met suddenly appeared from nowhere yesterday. So it looks like he'll be going out the door. We're told there's still interest from Greece and from Italy and Cyril Dessers. You would imagine if they can get them out the door reasonably quickly, they will harden up their move for Bojan Majowski. He doesn't want to move from Girona on a loan. He wants to go on a permanent deal. So if they can get the funds in for Egerman or for Dessers, then that will give them the scope to do that. I think Majowski would absolutely improve them up front. It would give them a really good option. So it's going to be a pretty frantic end to the window and quite a frantic build-up to Sunday at Ibrox, whatever happens, I think.
Right, finally, my final question for you both today, gentlemen, is can you see a way through for Rangers tonight? Your first, Cammy.
Unfortunately not, David. I think it's just a step too far for them.
Stephen?
I think Club Brugge are just too good a team. I think psychologically it can be a difficult situation when you go away from home and win as well as they did, but I think they will have too much to tank for Rangers.
All right, folks, that's all we've got time for today. Our pod has been cast, so to speak. Many thanks to Cammy Bell and Stephen McGowan, and most of all, thank you, folks, for listening. Remember, we're here with new episodes of the Scottish Football Podcast bright and early every day, so to make sure you don't miss out, subscribe on BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on in your phone. As they say, that's all, folks.
For everything you need to know about your team this season, download the BBC Sport app. All the latest news, goal updates, stats and scores, and insight and analysis. Just select your club to get the biggest stories and best content at your fingertips. What a result. Download the BBC Sport app for everything you need to know about your team this season.